Today's topic of conversation is my wish list for the F1 2018 game, and in specifics, career mode. So there's going to be mentions of the online, but just got to get out of the way that it's going to be the majority of this video will be focused around career mode and making that as good as it possibly can be. But let's just jump into it. Let's start off with the basics. Okay, so what do we want in every aspect of the game? And the first things first, I think we need a better damage model. We're jumping straight into it today, no messing around. The damage model needs to be improved. And we've had the same pretty much damage model now since the F1 games came out, or Codemasters got the license. They've got slightly better. You know, if you look at 2009, you compare it to 2017, there is a difference, but it's minimal differences every year. And I know last year I took part in the beta for F1 2017, and that damage model on the beta was incredible. Okay, so I don't know how much I was allowed to talk about this, but bits of the front of your car, I'm not talking about the front wing, I'm talking about where the driver's legs are, that would come off. Chips would come off the car, you could damage your rear wing, you could take that off. It was things like that where I think in the game, the damage model is great how it is, but there should be another option one tier higher. You can download mods for the PC, realistic damage, and I think it would just be great if Codemasters could just do a tier higher, perhaps not for online because we all know how awful the online driving is, but for career mode especially, and just general racing like quick races and that sort of thing, and even just co-op career modes if they introduce that again, that would be great to see. And I really think some big smashes is what career mode misses sometimes, especially for a casual fan. I know some of my mates can find the career mode a little bit boring. That's perhaps maybe because they're not into F1 as much as myself, but a damage model would definitely, I think, make people stick around for a bit longer. And partnered with that, another thing I just quickly want to go over before we get into the meat and bones of this video is the actual user interface. And what I mean by this is the menus while you're clicking everything. Now, it's not an awful one. It runs pretty smoothly, it's very clear and concise on what you have to do. But we've had practically the same menu now since F1 2015. Since we've gone to this generation of console, and PC that is from 2015 afterwards, just thought I'd help you out there, it's been exactly the same. Why? Every year we got used to it swapping around a bit. I mean, for example, 2010-11, you weren't just sat in some scroll menu, you were actually sort of walking around. 2010, you were sort of in this first-person view, looking around the paddock, clicking on each different sort of category in different areas. So you'd look to your motorhome and that would be career, you'd look at the interviewers and that would be quick race, you'd look at your teammate who was doing an interview on the side and that would be the options. It was really interesting. And 2011 as well, especially when you got into career mode, when you're in your motorhome clicking on all the options, that was a really nice little touch. And I think that's what these new games are missing, that sort of immersion as soon as you get into the game, rather than going into boring bog standard loading screens. And like I said, they're clean, they're concise, they're easy, but for me I just want that little bit of extra spice, a little bit of extra flavour that comes with the loading screens. And with that as well, something I always love when a new game came out was the new soundtrack. You've seen it, I use the F1 soundtracks on most of my videos. I love some of the old ones. F1 2009 is the one playing at the moment. I love that one. I think that's such a nostalgic one. 2010, 2012, 2011, I chuck them all in. But we've had the same one since 2015 again. Why? This year's was so lazily done. It was just a remix of the 2015 and 16 one. Come on, it's not even a good one. It's not even a classic one. That really let me down the past few years, especially 2015 to 16. That was gutting to see it was exactly the same. And I don't think I can deal with it 4 games in a row. They need to change. And the final sort of thing that needs to slightly be improved before we get into, like I say, the real big changes, is the AI. And there's no doubt, you know, before the hate comments come out, there's no doubt that the AI this season in F1 2017 game were great. They really were, especially at defending. Even their defending was just so much more aggressive than any other season, and the jump between 15, 16 and then 16 to 17 was so massive. It was fantastic. But what I really want to see from the AI in this new game is more aggressive attacking AI. You can easily sit in the middle of the road and the AI won't pass you. I watch career modes and it really annoys me. It's not people's fault who do career modes on YouTube, but the AI, you can easily exploit the AI, block them and bully them into not making a move. You make a defensive move and they'll just stick to their line they were going at. I'd love to see them do some dummies, do some dive bombs. I know it's really hard to do, but this is a wish list at the end of the day, and if they could implement that in some way, Codemasters, I'd be very much appreciated. But now let's focus on the main stuff, the big changes I want, and like I say, career mode is where I'm going to be focusing this video on, and mainly, what I really want is just an incredible immersion into the world of Formula One. I think that's what loads and loads of people have been wishing for in their particular wish lists. But not just on track, off track as well, and that's where I'm going to start this bit here. It's about creating the world of Formula One off track, and the main way they're going to be able to do that is through the use of cutscenes. Now, it's something that F1 hasn't really hugely done in the past. They've done newspaper loading screens, which I actually used to really like when they did that. They'd have headlines in a newspaper in the loading screens. That was a really nice touch, in my opinion. But I think little cutscenes here and there, sprinkled around nicely, could be really good, because at the moment, you start off in Australia, you do your practice, you qualify and you race, you go to your motorhome, then off you trot, a 2-minute loading screen, and then you're in China. And it, like, come on, we've just had the first race of the season, the buzz, and even the new season. You go from Abu Dhabi, you might have lost the World Championship by 1 point, you're gutted, you click A button twice, and then you're in Australia. You might be for a new team as well, and you're just sort of there. And it's, I mean, yes, there's a little few cutscenes you have, to be fair, with the PA agent and your engineer, just saying, oh, welcome to the new team, blah, 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 but it's nothing major. I'd love to see, well, I've got a little list of things here, little cutscenes I'd like to see, and I'd love to see maybe a tiny snippet of perhaps you want a plane looking out the window, just sort of the idea that you're travelling to the next race. It only has to be 2 seconds long. Maybe you've got a little cutscene of you entering a particular circuit, so you're in the back of a CRV, a 4x4 sort of thing, you're looking out the window, there's loads of cameras taking your picture. Maybe it's you setting up your motorhome, walking through the paddock, that sort of thing, and I think that could be really interesting, and that's just between each race. I think at the beginning of the season, you need things like you signing for the new team, you doing a little interview as the new team, maybe a car launch. I'd love to see car launches in this game. Okay, it would perhaps get a bit boring if you stayed at the same team, but it doesn't have to be that generic, you know? It could just be you see you're at Red Bull, you see your guy, Max Verstappen's your teammate. All that happens is you or Verstappen or together, you take a sheet off the car, and then that's it. You see the car, you see the two guys, cameras flashing, and for each team you could do a different background, perhaps a different way the car is slanted, that sort of thing. You could even implement perhaps the McLaren Technology Centre, that sort of thing, where the McLaren launches, just something a little bit interesting that hypes you up for the new season, maybe hypes you up for a new team you're joining, and that sort of thing, for me, could be really valuable. And I think cutscenes in general would be fantastic, and each time change them around. You know, not every race seeing the plane, not every race seeing show up to the circuit, because then that gets boring. It's like the classic cars at the moment. I really hate them. Every 2-3 races, you've got to do a classic car event, and you can't even skip them. But I think classic cars are a great idea. I've got a great idea for them later on. I love this idea that will be coming then. But I think just the fact that they're just there every time, it's just a bit boring and repetitive. And I think if they can just get a handful of these cutscenes, even just sometimes just flipping them around. You know, so you do a clip of one, you just 180 the clip, and then show it maybe 4 races down the line, just something like that, something a bit different. Again, like, I don't have all the ideas, but I think just cutscenes like that, sprinkled here and there, would be fantastic. And also, I just quickly mentioned it, but I'm going to mention it again, interviews. This was in 2010. They were fantastic. Perhaps they were a little overdone in 2010, but they could easily be fixed. When I say overdone, it's the fact that you're the only driver talking, you quickly see the other 2 drivers that are on the podium with you, you answer 3 questions, very, very generic, and then you move on. You could easily expand that a bit more, see a few more different shots of you standing up there on the sort of podium in the interview room, handshaking the other guys. That could be really... And hearing answers of other guys. You know, I'm sure that people... The drivers in F1 would happily do a few lines here and there to record. I'm sure they've got no issue with that, or no big issue. That probably wouldn't take forever. I'm sure they have a day here or there, especially during the summer break. Although a summer break, that's when the game comes out, so I'll have to rethink that one. And as well, I forgot to mention this at the beginning, most of these changes, the game's probably already finished. So half these changes probably won't be in the game, but it's just my wish list. Just thought I'd quickly clear that up. But I just think that sort of thing would be great. And interviewing, you know, you could choose to do an interview and announce you're moving to a new team. And then in the loading screen, if it's a newspaper loading screen, that, oh, F1 Reviews is moving to Ferrari. Like that sort of thing, you know? I think that could be really great. It would hype you up in the menus, make you want to do better. You might do an interview and Hamilton is saying, oh, F1 Reviews, he's not quick enough. I don't think he's a rival. And that'll spur you on a bit more. And even in your first season, you know, that introduction, who you are. And again, like I said about sprinkling in between every race, occasionally you could have a pre-weekend interview. They always do that every weekend in Formula 1, but it's not always every single driver. And I think that would be really interesting to see before practice. Maybe if you bought a few new parts, you could mention them. Just something a bit interesting, you know, and I think that's what this game needs, to be a bit different. And moving on from that, I'd love to see contract negotiations put into this game. Now, what I mean by that is, at the moment, it's very bland when you move teams. Okay, so let's say I'm at Williams. I've been at Williams for 4 seasons, and then at the end of the season, if you win the World Championship, despite Renault, McLaren, they were really interested, they don't put in an offer. It'll only be Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, which is annoying. It's really annoying. It's only the top 4 teams that ever want you, and I don't want that. Maybe I've been driving for Mercedes for 3 seasons, I've won the World Championship 3 seasons, and I think I'd love to help a lower team. Maybe, I'm Renault, I'd love to go to them and help them out, but I don't have the option. What I'm proposing is a system where any team that wants you, not only do they give you an offer, and they can give you an offer any time in the season, but you can also go to them. You can ask, you know, is there a space available? What do I have to do to get into your team? This was a concept sort of thought up by Arava. He said this in his particular video, and I thought it was a really, really great idea. And so I don't want to take full credit for it, but what I will add on to it is that I'd love to see different sort of things in the contract. So perhaps you want to do a multi-year deal. Perhaps you want to do a release clause, and the release clause could be, we'll allow you to leave the team if you hit this A, B and C targets. Perhaps the multi-year deal is, will make your targets a little bit less, so you have targets to stay in the team, let's say, and if you say sign a 2-year deal, we'll make your targets a bit more lenient, so then you'll stay with us a little bit longer. That sort of thing, just something else to be working on. And I'd love it as well if, say if you're at Ferrari, you would have to constantly be nagging them to go to Mercedes. Ferrari, in real life, it's very unlikely they'd just let their driver walk off to another team. It's like if you're at a Toro Rosso, they wouldn't just let you go to Mercedes. They'd keep on pushing you to try and get to Red Bull, to keep you to stay within that Renault family. And I think things like that particular instance with teams being fussy, that's going to probably be difficult to implement. But I just think that whole contract system, especially when you've been at a team so long, teams so willing to let you go, I don't think it's great. And the whole contract system itself, that's another thing that could have a little cutscene. You know, you could go into your office and you could see all of the different ones sort of laid out in folders on the desk, and then you click on the folder, perhaps you pick it up, open it up, and then you can see all perhaps your wages on there, maybe sponsorships you have to do, that sort of thing, and then a little cutscene of you signing it. Again, that's just something extra that adds a lot. And that's going to be a running theme throughout this video, is that little things can make big improvements, can make a big difference. And now we're going to move to the on-track differences, which is I'm sure is the main bit everyone wants to see. And I'm still going to stand by this. Small things can make a lot of difference. Last year, we saw the implementation of the formation lap, and I think that was a great change. I really do. Not that I use it all the time, but it's really nice that it's there. And it's one of those things, like so many of these things, where you think, why? Why is it not in the game? Such an easy thing just to plop in. Why not have it? And the formation lap, like I say, I don't use it all the time, but when I do use it, it just feels good. You know, staying in line, and especially when you're pulling up at the end. I know you don't control it at the end, but adds a little bit more tension. And that was a good step for me that Codemasters did. I just think they need to up it again and add a few more of those little sort of cheeky little bits here and there. And to start off with that, I'm going to go with better helmet customization. Again, this is not a new concept by myself, and we're all aware you need more options, more customization. There's about maybe 20 different helmets on this particular game, and if you got it early, you got an extra 6 or 7, and even the extra ones you couldn't change. They were just bog standard. And I think you look at the helmet selection from 2013. Why can't you just have them as well as these new ones? Why can't it be the same list for all of them and they just keep adding more and more? Because I have thought about your own custom designer, a bit like a Black Ops emblem editor, that sort of thing, but your own helmet. We've seen on games before livery editors, Forza does that very well. But why can't we have our own helmet one? I think that would be a great idea, and I think that F1 wouldn't be fully against it, but it's just something I don't see Codemasters doing anytime soon. And I think a quicker, better option for them is just to make as many helmets as possible. For example, the ones that you got extra with the game last season were fan-made. Well, why don't we just keep chucking in fan-made ones? F1 2014 had this thing where if you did an event and did well in the event or partaked in the event, you got a free helmet. Now, why aren't they doing that in 2017? I don't know. And 2018, I think, again, it's just an easy little change. It doesn't have to be major, like a helmet designer, which would be fab, but just something little where they just keep putting in more and more helmets. Every month they put in an extra 5 helmets. It just really helps, and just have a selection of over 100 at the start. I think it was good this year, especially that you could change all the colours. That was a nice little addition, but it could be better. And something again that needs to be implemented is sponsorships on helmets, because the fact that they're all plain just looks so wrong. It really does. And just the option to put the team emblem on your helmet as well. Perhaps, I don't know, they put in fake sponsors in the game. Games have done this before, put in fake sponsors, and I think this could be great for F1. So, for example, let's say a company called F1 Reviews wants to sign you. They want to sponsor you. You can sign a little contract with them. You can have a cutscene for that, so another thing going in. And then you can choose where you want to put their sponsor on your helmet. So it can't go on the car, obviously, because there's a lot of licensing issues with that. But it can go on your helmet. Say Codemasters and F1 Reviews both want to sponsor you, but you've only got one space. It's something else to be considering. You know, perhaps they only want to do it for a certain amount of races. Perhaps they'll give you a bonus of something, more R&D points. That would be something else just to be considering, to chuck you in that world of Formula 1. And I think, again, just something that it needs. helmets look so bland. I think the ones on F1 2013 were great. I think they had some great options there. But these ones this season, except the extra ones, they're all pretty plain. You can play around with them and you can eventually find ones you like, but some of them look so stupid, it's just pointless. And they need to change. And with that, I also think it'd be good, this is going to sort of lead me on to another point, further customization with the helmets, as in the inside colour. So you might have noticed in the past that Senna, the inside of his helmet was green. Hamilton's done that a few times. Felipe Massa, the inside of his helmet used to be green as well. Just again, it's something else just to play around with, tinker with, waste your time in. I mean, think about this. If you've played GTA, how much time have you wasted just messing around with cars? Even Forza, just designing liveries, that sort of thing. FIFA, doing transfers, that sort of thing. You waste time on that. But it breaks up the game, doesn't make it repetitive, makes it last longer. And I think just little things like these helmet things would be great. And with the inside colour of the helmet changing, why don't you do a visor tin? We know that's a thing in Formula 1, they change their visors for night races. Why can't we see a little visor tin? And that's where the leeway is on to the next question, or topic, and that is terrible visors. So, if you weren't aware, F1 drivers, the actual visor is a tear-off. So what happens when it gets dirty, the drivers put their arm over their visor and rip it off. Okay? And I think that, again, it would just be an easy little thing to put into the game. Say, on Xbox controller, you press X. Okay? X isn't a good example if you play Xbox, but just a button at random that isn't useful. So, a button on the D-pad, perhaps. You press that, it takes the visor off. You could see the screen, it's starting to get slightly dirty, it's a little bit blurry in places, and it's just trying to show you that it's getting a bit dirty, you need a new visor. And I think that, again, just a little change, you don't have to have it on, you can turn off the option, but for some people, especially in career mode, it just adds something, doesn't it? Something extra, something a bit fun. But now let's move on to some little bit more bigger changes. We're moving on to the medium changes, as I'm going to call them. We'll move on. We'll do them in terms of compounds. So, I don't know, but is soft? Is ultra soft? Is that bad? We won't do it in terms of compounds. Trap the idea already. Medium-sized changes then. I want decreased player reliability. In 5 seasons of my career mode, this is actuals with this particular story. In 5 seasons of my career mode with Sauber, I've had 0 issues with my car. 0, not a single one. My teammate, Pascal Wehrlein, always has them. Esteban Ocon, bless him, won every race pretty much. But I've never had one in a Sauber. And that'd be great. When I was younger, I used to play, the first ever F1 game I had was F1 2002. And for some reason, I remember doing a career mode as Jean Pablo Montoya in Williams, and I was at Indianapolis, fighting for the World Championship, and my engine blew. And I was gutted. I don't know why I remember that so vividly, but I do. And it was so cool driving in that game, and all of a sudden your engine's gone, race over. You'd actually feel a bit gutted. And if they put that in this game, it gives you something to work for. Is it fair that you're fighting for the World Championship with Vettel and he has a higher chance of retiring from the race than you in a McLaren Honda? No, it's not fair, is it? It's not even realistic. So why don't have it in the game? And with that, even if we have an improved damage model, why can't it be that we have our DRS flap stuck? That'd be great. We've seen it in the game that you can't use DRS, but why can't it be stuck open and we've got to be disqualified? Why can't our tyre just suddenly pop off and our engineer says, oh, we're so sorry mate, a suspension failure, that sort of thing? Why? That would be fantastic. Suddenly losing gears. Maybe you've got to reset the car in the middle of a race. That would be mad. Why is it not in the game? I think it should be. That's why it's on the wish list. Something else in the medium changes is a grid mix-up, okay? So, I think, again, this is something we all want, is a grid mix-up. And what I mean by this is, if you are not in a team in F1 2017, then they're never going to improve. So, for example, I was with Sauber, like I said, got them to the second best team on the grid. McLaren, with all their money, all their resources, was still bottom. Still bottom. After 5 seasons. Renault, still in the midfield, going nowhere. Everyone's the same order except Sauber, who had moved up with me. And it's just annoying, because there's no way in 5 years of F1 that the grid is exactly the same pecking order. Okay, perhaps Renault is a little bit closer to Williams, but nothing even monumental has changed. It's the same people at the front, same people at the back. And I think it needs a switch up every season, and whether this is like Bentir McMurdoch has said, or Arava, where every couple of seasons the grid is completely turned around, mixed up, or whether just for every season, one team is at the end is given an imaginary double R&D points, and they increase double. And all of a sudden, after a couple of seasons, the grid has gone chaos. And I think that's all it needs. I don't think it needs, 3 seasons the same running order, then a complete change, then the next 3 seasons, because that's just daft. But it could just be fun. In the first season, oh, what's that? Williams have had double points. Oh, they've gone from one of the back markers back to one of the 5th or 4th teams. Bit of a change around in the midfield. Then the next season, it could be, looks like Force India are dropping down a bit. Oh, McLaren they're at the podiums now. It could even be, there's a chance, Mercedes and Ferrari fighting for the first championship. The second championship, oh my god, Mercedes are a second quicker than everyone else. Just spice it up, change it around, would be nice to see. And the final medium change, before we move on to the big ones that I can't wait to share, the final one in the medium section is race highlights. Something that's never really been explored in F1. You have an option to replay the whole entire race, but never race highlights. And it's very difficult to implement, I'm aware. But looking at FIFA, match highlights is a thing. And what it does is the game, its algorithm, it notices close shots, big tackles, big moments in the game. Why can't F1 do that? Why can't the game say, right, we'll watch the start of the race in our highlights reel, that'll be at the very beginning every time, the first corner, that. Then what we'll do is we'll chuck in some really close moments on track. Maybe there was a big crash in... This is the sort of thing. Maybe there was a big crash in the midfield you didn't get to see. Maybe you were fighting alongside Hamilton, you pit first, and then Hamilton is in a crash with Vettel. They're out, and you think, well, what happened there? I wanted to see that. And this race highlights isn't just on you, it's on the AI as well. And I think it would just be a great thing just to click on at the end, just in case. And for people doing career modes, I've done F1 career modes before on other channels, my old channel. And it can be a pain going through the whole race replay, looking to see what the AI have done. And I think it would be great if they had a race highlights reel just for that sort of fun element. This isn't even immersion, the race highlights. Just a bit of fun, just to see what the other guys got up to. Perhaps Van Dorn did a monstrous overtake on Bottas, and you thought, where's that come from? Perhaps, I don't know, Van Dorn again has gone completely into the side of Carlos Sainz. And you think, oh my god, that's why he got a penalty. So I think it would just be helpful just to refresh yourself what happened in the race. And perhaps you've done a long race of career mode. Maybe you even did 100%. And you think, oh, what a race. I'd love to see the highlights. So that's just something I think should be chucked in, especially with 100% as well, or 50%. Going through the race replay, there's no point doing that. That is too long. But a race highlights would be very, very welcome, Codemasters. Please, that'd be very nice. But now we get to the business end. The big improvements. Thanks for sticking along with the video if you've made it this far. Hopefully it'll all be worth it now. Big improvements. We've got to remember strict licensing with F1, okay? So we can't have livery changes season to season. That can't happen. We can't have driver transfers, as much as that's a pain. We can't have that. We can't have calendar changes. We can't have that in the game, okay? Licensing is so strict with F1, and it's fair enough. So many sponsors are involved. The teams are earning so much money. This isn't like FIFA where the player roster is 30 players. F1 teams have 2 drivers, and unlike football, so in football, say you've got Mesut Ozil and he moves to Manchester United. Manchester United, their sponsors don't change because of that. Whereas in F1, Sebastian Vettel, say, comes with Ray-Ban. If Vettel, he goes to Mercedes, Mercedes now have Ray-Ban as their sponsor. So that's how it works in F1, and that's why they can't be doing driver transfers in the game. And as much as it's a shame, it's got to happen. It can't happen whatsoever. And with Liberty Media now in charge of F1, it opens doors. It does, I'll say that. And in a few games down the line we might see that, but I'm not expecting it this game or the next. But it's something I'm 100% sure we'd all love to see in the game. But let's move on then. Let's finally crack on with the big changes. And we need to see pre-season and mid-season testing, okay? This is the only big change, and then we've got the 2 huge changes. But this, why I've called it a big change, is it's more of a game mode, okay? So, pre-season, we've already got the Circuit de Catalunya in the game. Why can't we do that? Especially if we're joining a new team. Why can't we fly up there and do a few laps in the new car? Reliability's poor. The more laps you do, the better reliability you might have over the season. Maybe the better multiplier you have of R&D points, that sort of thing. Again, just breaks up the game, adds a bit of difference, makes it more interesting. And even mid-season testing. You get to Hungary, the summer break. Put the summer break in the game. Make sure there's a long break. Do cutscenes. Maybe do cutscenes of you perhaps on holiday. I've put that in quotation mark, on holiday. Just little cutscenes of you doing bits and bobs. And in that, you can do the Hungary test. You can do after the race a few laps just to increase that multiplier of R&D for the end of the season. And it's again just mixes it up. And the young driver event at the beginning of the season that was used in 2013, I really enjoyed that. Especially if they put in actual young drivers, Ollie Rowland, for example, if he was chucked in there, Antonio Fuoco, Luca Giotto, people from F2, maybe some female drivers chucked in there as well. That would be really nice to see, really refreshing to see. I mean, that re-put into the game. It's sad that they took it out, but they did. And if they put that back in, could be a lot of fun. I would definitely welcome it. And you have the option to skip. I think that's something that this game missed, especially with not just the cutscenes, but also you've got the classic events. I said to you earlier, I wasn't the biggest fan of the classic events, and an option to skip them would have been fun and definitely would have been welcome. And so you can do that with pre-season, mid-season, and young driver. You don't have to do it, but it's there if you want, and I think that's just what I want in this career mode. So the final 2 changes, the final 2 things on the wish list. I've been wanting in F1 games for years now, and now is the perfect time to add it. I'm going to say that every year. I'm sure in next year's game wish list, both of them will still be there, but I want them both. This will never go away, and if Codemasters put this in the game, well, then I'd make sure everyone knows that that is the best F1 game of all time. And the first of those big changes is Classic Season. Now, you're thinking, well, we've already got a Classic Season. We've had that before, it was rubbish. We've already got classic cars, what are you on about Classic Season? Well, Classic Season, in my opinion, is not what you think it is. The idea of Classic Season is that we don't just only have F1 2018 career mode. We have, for example, F1 2007 career mode, F1 1998 career mode. We pick another season, is what we do. We make sure that we have a complete set, a complete grid of other cars from a different year, complete with drivers, complete with calendar, complete with cars, everything. As many sponsors as we can as well. Very difficult for that. So for this example, we'll say F1 2007. But wouldn't that be great? Honestly, I've had this idea for so long, no one's ever mentioned it. But why couldn't we have that? You could argue that yes, this is an F1 2018 game, But why can't it be an almost sort of remastered package alongside? We've seen this with Call of Duty, we've seen this with tons of other games. Rainbow Six Siege have done this. I'm pretty sure Borderlands has done this as well. I'm struggling to think of examples now, which isn't great. But loads of games are coming with the old remastered versions, and instead of doing that, why don't we just have the season on as well? I feel this isn't even loads and loads and loads of work, really. This does involve scrapping the current classic cars we have at the moment. That is something that I want to make clear. That is gone. That whole thing is pretty much gone. So, as you can obviously tell as well, that means getting rid of the classic events, which I've mentioned I'm not a huge fan of, but you could have classic events in terms of going in the F1 2007 cars, which could be fun. And I think, not only, again, does this add variety, and as well this would be exactly the same as the F1 2018 career mode, pretty much the same cutscenes, a sort of slightly different layout and visuals, perhaps. That would be nice to see, a bit like the classic career mode they had back in 2013, although that was a lot different to what I'm proposing here. But it would just be so fun. And as well, we have seen this sort of thing in an F1 game before. Not quite to the scale I'm suggesting, where there's a 10-year gap, say, but F1 2015, what happened in that game? We also had F1 2014, complete with it. Very different circumstances, I will admit, but we did see two different seasons with fully fleshed out career modes pretty much, so why can't we have that in this game? I even think that idea that F1 2015 had, where you would almost swap over to a completely new game, I think that would be great. I think that would be incredible, incredible, incredible. And as well, you could always, the main thing that these F1 games are trying to do is to get people interested in the sport. And I think there's no better way to do that than to show off F1's amazing, incredible history. And I think this is the best way for young fans, new fans, to learn about it. To see these old cars, to see the changes, to see the drivers. You know, for some people, you know, if we had F1 2007, the rookie Lewis Hamilton joins McLaren, and these fans get to learn about what that season was like. Were they at the front? Who were the back markers? And then you can take this in two different directions. In the next game, F1 2019, you could just do the next season of the classic one. So then we'd have F1 2008. And move it along like that each year. So eventually, yes, it will catch up, but by then, graphics will improve so much, they can just remaster if they need to. And I think, again, it's something a bit of fun, something extra, and I think that's what the current set of classic cars are missing, a whole grid of them. It's great seeing the Ferrari 2007, but where's the Renault 2007? Where's the Spiker 2007, you know? Where's the Honda? I think it's needed. The other way you could take it is just pick a season. Pick an amazing season, and then each year do that. 1976, say we chuck in 1988, we chuck in a 1997, we could even chuck in a 1950s, one of the very early ones, although that would be difficult with the amount of drivers that were in those sort of seasons. You could chuck in a 2007, a 2008, 2009, all three of those fantastic. Again, I can't stress it enough. What's wrong with F1 games is they're stagnant, they're dull, and the fact that we're talking about this wish list and all these videos are coming out at the moment from different creators proves that the game does not have the shelf life it's expected to have. And yes, the true fans will stay, but the casual fans will not. And that's what F1 needs to do to improve, because the game, for any sport, is a big draw to the sport. And it gets people interested, and having a bit of history, a bit more on the game would be fantastic. And I think this is number one on my wish list, but it could be rivaled by the final thing I want to quickly talk about. And again, this is something no one else has spoken about, and again, it could be something that would completely revolutionise the game, and that is the implementation of Formula 2. So, MotoGP games, they have MotoGP 3, MotoGP 2, and MotoGP. Why can't F1 do that? yes, there's hundreds of series ways to get into F1, but why can't we have F2? The idea of making it F2 is that it's an actual feeder into Formula 1. You go into F2 now, and 99% of the time, if you're fantastic in that, it's the best way to F1. Yes, we've seen drivers like Stroll, like Bottas and Verstappen go straight from Formula 3, GP3, European Formula 3, all these sort of categories, and go straight to F1. But Formula 2, I believe, still the best way. Although that might be controversial, sorry, but just for the sakes of today, we'll say this. And if you put in Formula 2, that makes you earn your seat in F1. You're not just presented with any old team you fancy joining, you've got to get there. Again, this would be something that you can skip, you don't have to do, because I think that's key as well, making it is a game at the end of the day, and enjoyability is the best, and for a casual fan, they probably wouldn't want to do Formula 2, but having the option to start there, for a die-hard fan, mixes it up so much more. Earning your seat in Formula 1, perhaps Formula 2 you did bad, you got to stay there for a second season, but while you're there in Formula 2, maybe in the middle of the season, let's say Hulkenberg's doing a bad job at Renault, you get to take his seat. Renault are interested, they've been following you in Formula 2 and want to give you that seat halfway through. Maybe you're doing well in Formula 2 and halfway through the season there's no F1 teams interested, but let's say Toro Rosso's seen you, they want to give you a test drive, they want you to be there at that mid-season testing, to give you a go, to give you your chance. You get that taste of Formula 1, makes you push extra in Formula 2. Just fun. That would make it incredible, so much better. It's going to be difficult to implement, and there's no way they'd add this and the classic season, but I think perhaps, it would be difficult. It would be difficult, but I think Formula 2 for me would have the edge. You know, across the season you can have links to F1 teams. You can also be deciding, do you want to stay in Formula 2 for a second season? If you win the World Championship, you can't. And if you don't get a seat in F1, you might have to miss out a season. But maybe you're making that decision. You come second in Formula 2, or do I want to go to another team in Formula 2 and win the thing, or do I want to make the jump to F1? Maybe the F1 contracts, they weren't quite the team I wanted, I'll do another season of Formula 2. And I think that's just really interesting, really fun to add, and perhaps, okay, this is maybe a little bit far-fetched, but maybe you're doing awful in F1. Maybe, let's say you're with Force India, and you've done awful, and they say, right, we don't want you to do this next race, we're going to get, say you took Perez's seat, we're going to get Perez back in for this race, you can do a race in Formula 2. Again, just mixing it up a bit. And with Formula 2, you can, I've said it all video long, more cutscenes, which is always fun, and as well, learning the future of F1, learning who these guys in young categories are. So when they get to F1, like Sorokin, you know who they are, rather than just these names that many people don't know who they are. Just a bit of fun, some food for thought, but that is my wish list done. That was a long video, right? And if you stuck to the end, hats off to you guys. So I won't beg for a like and subscribe, but I really hope you have enjoyed is the main thing, and that what I've said makes sense, if that makes sense in itself, and that maybe it's given you some ideas. Maybe you're at Cody's and it's given you some ideas, I don't know, that'd be cool, but hopefully this has served its purpose and gives more people ideas of where we can push the F1 game, because that's it at the end of the day. This wish list isn't about, having a go at old F1 games, it's about making them as good as possible for everyone. And these changes, like I say, Formula 2 classic season, that would be incredible. Is it going to happen? I highly doubt it, but if it did, well, that would make my day, make my year probably. bit sad, but anyways, hopefully you guys have enjoyed as always. Remember, pretty much daily videos on the channel at the moment. I'm trying my best. Yesterday I had a day off because it was about two weeks straight I'd done daily videos. So I had a day off yesterday, but I've come back with a bang today, hopefully. Hopefully you've enjoyed. Incredible if you've made it this far. Hats off to you. And I'll see you in the next one.